Food Rules, An Eater's Manual by Michael Pollan. Picture yourself standing in the middle of a modern supermarket. Just take a second and really imagine it. The bright, humming lights overhead, those endless aisles packed with thousands upon thousands of colorful boxes, bags, and bottles, all practically screaming for your attention. One box whispers promises about lowering your cholesterol. Another proudly declares itself heart-healthy. A brightly colored tube of yogurt gets marketed as portable and fun. It feels less like a place to gather nourishment and more like stepping into a loud, confusing casino where, let's be honest, the odds are definitely stacked against you. In our time, the simple ancient act of eating has somehow become incredibly complicated. We're getting bombarded with advice from every possible direction. Doctors, diet gurus, government pyramids, and food labels that honestly read more like chemistry textbooks than anything you'd want to eat. We know more about antioxidants, omega-3s, and saturated fats than any generation in history. And yet, here's the strange part. We've never been more confused about one simple fundamental question: what should we eat? This confusion isn't some accident. It's actually a business, a very, very profitable business. But what if I told you that the answer isn't complicated at all? What if the secret to navigating this confusing world of food could be boiled down to just 7 simple words? That is the profound, life-changing promise of a little book called Food Rules, written by the brilliant journalist and food detective Michael Pollan. This book isn't a diet plan. It has no complex charts, no calorie counting, and no forbidden food groups. Instead, it's a collection of timeless wisdom, an eater's manual, designed to cut through all the noise and return us to a place of clarity and joy around food. Pollan embarked on a journey, not as a scientist but as a curious journalist, to answer that one simple question for himself and his family. He dove deep into the science of nutrition, the history of our diets, and the wisdom of cultures around the world. And what he discovered was genuinely startling. The deeper he went, the simpler the picture became. He realized that for all our scientific sophistication, we've actually been led astray, and the path back to health was hiding in plain sight, in the advice of our grandmothers and in the simple logic of nature. Today, we are going to walk that path with him. We'll unpack the 64 simple, powerful rules he gathered. And by the end of our time together, you'll possess a new lens through which to see food, a lens of clarity that will not only change what you put on your plate, but will also transform your relationship with eating itself. This isn't about restriction. It's about freedom. The freedom to eat well, without anxiety, and to rediscover one of life's greatest and most fundamental pleasures. So, what is the grand, 7-word secret that Michael Pollan uncovered after all his research? It's this: eat food. Not too much. Mostly plants. That's it. That's the foundation. It sounds almost laughably simple, doesn't it? And yet, within those 3 short phrases lies a universe of wisdom that can completely recalibrate our health and happiness. The rest of the book, all 64 rules, are simply practical ways to put that philosophy into action. Let's explore them not as a list, but as a journey, starting with the most challenging part of his advice. What does it even mean to eat food? You might think, well, of course I eat food. What else would I be eating? But Pollan makes a brilliant and crucial distinction here. He argues that a huge portion of what is sold in the supermarket today doesn't actually deserve to be called food at all. He calls them edible food-like substances. These are the highly processed concoctions of industrial science. They're the products with dozens of ingredients, many of which you can't pronounce. They're engineered in labs to have an unnaturally long shelf life and to be addictively delicious, pushing our evolutionary buttons for salt, sugar, and fat. Real food, by contrast, is simple. It's the stuff your ancestors would recognize. This brings us to one of the most powerful rules in the entire book. Don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. Imagine walking through the grocery store with her. She'd know exactly what to do with an apple, a potato, a chicken, or a bag of rice. But what would she make of a yogurt tube, or a packaged lunch kit, or a cereal that turns the milk electric blue? She'd probably squint at it, turn it over in her hands and ask if it was some new kind of toothpaste. This rule isn't about being old-fashioned. It's a remarkably effective filter to separate real food from the industrial imitations. Those imitations are often packed with things no ordinary human keeps in their pantry. Think about it. When you cook at home, do you reach for a little xanthan gum to thicken your sauce? Or some calcium propionate to keep your bread from molding? Of course not. But corporations do. Pollan gives us a few more sharp tools to spot these substances. Avoid food products that contain more than 5 ingredients. Or, a simpler version, avoid food products containing ingredients that a third grader cannot pronounce. These rules aren't arbitrary. They point to a fundamental truth. The more processed a food is, the more of its original nutrition has likely been stripped away, and the more salt, sugar, and chemical additives have been pumped back in to make it palatable and profitable. Another dead giveaway of a food-like substance is the health claim. This sounds completely backward, but think it through. Pollan's rule is, avoid food products that make health claims. The real healthy food in the supermarket, the apples, the broccoli, the sweet potatoes, doesn't need to boast. It sits there in quiet confidence. The growers of that produce don't have the massive marketing budgets to get a special health claim approved and plaster it on a package. It's the big corporations, selling the highly processed cereals, granolas, and snacks that make the loudest claims. They'll take a box of refined carbohydrates, pump it full of synthetic vitamins, and then shout about how it's a good source of fiber or helps support your child's immunity. Remember margarine? It was one of the first industrial foods to claim it was healthier than the real food it replaced. Butter. We now know it was loaded with trans fats that were terrible for our hearts. The healthiest foods are often the ones that have nothing to say for themselves. So the first step in this journey is learning to distinguish the real food from the imposters. A few more simple guidelines can help us navigate the treacherous landscape of the supermarket. One of the most practical is to shop the peripheries of the supermarket and stay out of the middle. Almost every grocery store is laid out the same way. The outer walls are where you find the fresh produce, the meat and fish, the dairy, the eggs. This is where the real food lives. The center aisles are the territory of the edible food-like substances, the chips, the sodas, the cookies, the frozen pizzas, the canned soups with paragraphs for ingredient lists. If you can discipline yourself to stick to the edges of the store, you'll almost automatically fill your cart with better things. Another wonderful rule of thumb is to eat only foods that will eventually rot. Real food is alive. It comes from the soil, from plants and animals. And because it's alive, it must eventually die. An apple will wither and brown. A loaf of real bread will grow mold. This is a good thing. It means the food is still connected to nature. The highly processed products in the center aisles, however, are designed for near immortality. A certain snack cake can famously survive for decades. This incredible shelf life is achieved by stripping away anything that could go rancid, like healthy fats, and adding a host of preservatives. If the bacteria and fungi, our competitors for nutrients, don't want to eat it, why should you? Ultimately, the best way to ensure you're eating real food is to escape the supermarket entirely whenever you can. Get out of the supermarket whenever you can. Head to a farmer's market. There, you won't find anything with high fructose corn syrup, a list of unpronounceable ingredients, or a bogus health claim. What you will find is fresh, whole food, often grown in healthy soil, picked at the peak of its flavor and nutritional value. The kind of food your great-grandmother would not only recognize but celebrate. This leads to a simple, powerful idea that summarizes this whole first step. If it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. So, once you've learned to fill your cart with actual food, the next question arises: what kind of food should you eat? This brings us to the second part of Pollan's mantra: mostly plants. This isn't a command to become a vegetarian or vegan, though Pollan points out that people who follow those diets are often remarkably healthy. It's a gentle, flexible guideline. Eat mostly plants, especially leaves. Scientists may argue about why plants are so good for us. Is it the antioxidants, the fiber, the polyphenols? But they all agree on one thing. A diet rich in fruits and vegetables is one of the single best things you can do for your health. Studies consistently show that people who eat more plants have dramatically lower rates of all the so-called Western diseases, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and many cancers. So how do you put this into practice? One beautiful and simple rule is to eat your colors. This is an old piece of folk wisdom that turns out to be excellent science. The vibrant colors in vegetables and fruits, the deep purple of an eggplant, the bright orange of a carrot, the rich red of a tomato, are created by different families of phytochemicals. These are the plant's protective compounds, and when we eat them, they help protect us. Each color signifies a different set of benefits, so by building a plate with a wide variety of colors, you ensure you're getting the broadest possible range of nutrients. Now, what about meat? Pollan's advice is not to eliminate it, but to change our relationship with it. He suggests we treat meat as a flavoring or a special occasion food. For most of human history, meat was a luxury, not an everyday staple served in massive portions. The average American now eats over half a pound of meat per day. Pollan suggests we simply flip the portions on our plate. Instead of a huge steak with a tiny side of broccoli, try a large serving of broccoli with a few small pieces of steak. A wonderful old Chinese proverb captures this hierarchy of health. Eating what stands on one leg, mushrooms and plants, is better than eating what stands on two legs, chicken, which is better than eating what stands on four legs, cows and pigs. And when you do eat animal products, whether it's meat, milk, or eggs, it's vital to remember that you are what you eat, and they are what they eat. This leads to the rule: eat animals that have themselves eaten well. An industrial cow raised in a feedlot and fed a diet of corn, antibiotics, and hormones will have a very different nutritional profile than a cow that spent its life grazing on green pasture. The meat and milk from pastured animals are consistently higher in healthy omega-3 fatty acids, vitamins, and antioxidants. The same is true for chickens and their eggs. It costs more, but this is a cornerstone of Pollan's philosophy, which we'll touch on later. Pay more, eat less. To broaden your nutritional horizons, Pollan encourages us to eat like an omnivore. This doesn't just mean eating both plants and animals. It means seeking out diversity. The modern supermarket, for all its apparent variety, is built on a remarkably small number of species, primarily corn, soy, and wheat. Try to introduce new kinds of plants, mushrooms, and fish into your diet. And on that note, don't overlook the oily little fishes. While large predator fish like tuna and swordfish can be high in mercury and are often overfished, small, oily fish like sardines, anchovies, and mackerel are nutritional powerhouses, packed with omega-3s, and their populations are often much more sustainable. Finally, Pollan reminds us to trust the wisdom of tradition. For thousands of years, cultures have been figuring out what works. He suggests we eat some foods that have been pre-digested by bacteria or fungi. This means fermented foods like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, and real sourdough bread. These foods are rich in probiotics, the beneficial bacteria that support our digestive and immune systems. He also encourages us to eat more like the French, or the Japanese, or the Italians, or the Greeks. Any traditional food culture that has stood the test of time has, by definition, figured out how to keep its people healthy. These diets are more than just a list of foods. They are complex systems, with wisdom embedded in how foods are combined, like corn with lime and beans in Latin America, and, just as importantly, in how they are eaten. And this brings us to the third and final piece of the puzzle, the last part of that 7-word mantra: not too much. This might be the most challenging part for us today, living in a culture of supersizing and all-you-can-eat buffets. But controlling how much we eat is just as important as controlling what we eat. Pollan doesn't suggest a miserable, restrictive diet. Instead, he offers a set of cultural habits and personal policies that can help us moderate our consumption naturally and mindfully. It starts with a shift in mindset: pay more, eat less. In America, food is cheaper than in almost any other country on earth, and we have responded by eating a lot more of it. Pollan argues that if we choose to spend a bit more on higher quality food, like the pastured meat we talked about, or organic vegetables from the farmer's market, we will value it more. We'll be more inclined to cook it with care, to serve it in smaller portions, and to savor every bite. When food tastes better, you need less of it to feel satisfied. As our grandmothers used to say, better to pay the grocer than the doctor. One of the most profound rules from other cultures is to stop eating before you're full. This is a radical idea for us. We're taught to clean our plates and eat until we feel stuffed. But the Japanese have a saying, harahachi bu, which means eat until you're 80% full. The logic is simple. It takes about 20 minutes for your stomach to send the "I'm full" signal to your brain. If you eat quickly, you can easily blow past the point of satiety long before your brain gets the message. This is why the next rule is so crucial. Eat slowly. Savor your food. Put your fork down between bites. If you're chasing a food experience rather than just calories, slowing down allows you to have more of an experience with less food. There's a brilliant adage that captures this. The banquet is in the first bite. Think about it. That first bite of chocolate cake is pure bliss. The second is great. The 10th? It's good. But the pleasure has diminished significantly. By savoring those first few bites, we can get the maximum enjoyment and then stop, realizing that more calories won't necessarily bring more pleasure. To help with this, we need to re-engineer our environment. Buy smaller plates and glasses. Studies have shown that we will unconsciously eat more food off a larger plate. Simply switching from a 12-inch dinner plate to a 10-inch one can cause people to eat over 20% less without even noticing. And when you serve yourself, serve a proper portion and don't go back for seconds. Our relationship with time matters too. The old saying, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper, holds a lot of wisdom. Eating your biggest meal earlier in the day gives your body more active hours to burn those calories, rather than storing them as fat while you sleep. Perhaps the most important rules in this section are about reclaiming the culture of eating. For much of human history, eating was a communal, structured event. Today, we have what marketers call eating occasions, a constant, all-day stream of snacking. So Pollan's advice is simple. Eat meals, and do all your eating at a table. Not at your desk, not in your car, and not in front of the television. When we eat mindlessly, we always eat more. Eating at a table, preferably with other people, forces us to slow down, to pay attention, and to connect the act of eating with community and family, rather than just fueling up like a car at a gas station. Which, by the way, is another great rule. Don't get your fuel from the same place your car does. Finally, Pollan gives us 2 essential rules for a long, healthy, and happy life with food. The first is to cook, and if you can, plant a garden. Taking back control of your food from the corporations is one of the most powerful political acts a person can take. When you cook, you know exactly what is going into your food. You control the salt, the sugar, the quality of the oil. You are no longer a passive consumer, but an active participant in your own nourishment. The decline in home cooking in America directly parallels the rise in obesity. People who cook are simply healthier. And the last rule, number 64, may be the most important of all. After giving us all this wonderful advice, Pollan tells us to break the rules once in a while. He understands that a life of rigid, obsessive adherence to rules is not a happy life. Food should be a source of joy, not anxiety. There will be birthday parties with cake. There will be holidays and celebrations. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to change your everyday habits, your default settings. If, on most days, you are following this simple path, eating real food, mostly plants, and not too much, then you have earned the freedom to joyfully and guiltlessly celebrate those special occasions that make life sweet. When you step back and look at food rules as a whole, you realize that Michael Pollan has done something remarkable. In an age of overwhelming complexity, he has given us the gift of simplicity. He has taken a subject that fills us with anxiety and confusion and returned it to a place of common sense, tradition, and pleasure. The most powerful lesson in this book, to me, is that eating well is not about what you add to your life, not about some miracle supplement, a complicated diet plan, or a new piece of scientific knowledge. It's about what you can subtract. It's about subtracting the noise of marketing, the confusion of junk science, and the industrial food-like substances that have crowded out the real food our bodies have known and trusted for millennia. What Pollan is really offering is not a diet, but a philosophy. It's a philosophy that trusts the accumulated wisdom of culture over the latest fads of science. It's a philosophy that understands that how we eat is just as important as what we eat. Rules like eat at a table or try not to eat alone aren't about nutrition in the chemical sense. They're about reestablishing food's central role in our families and communities. They are about transforming eating from a solitary act of consumption into a shared act of communion. This book matters so much today, especially for someone your age, because you are standing at a crossroads. You are forming the habits that will carry you through the rest of your life. The modern food industry is spending billions of dollars to push you down one path, a path of fast, cheap, easy, and highly processed foods that will lead, for many, to chronic disease and a lifetime of battling with their weight and health. Pollan is offering you another path. It's a quieter, more thoughtful path. It might require a little more effort to cook a meal, to visit a farmer's market, to plant a seed, but the rewards are immeasurable. So how can you start? Don't try to adopt all 64 rules tomorrow. That would be overwhelming. Just pick one or two that resonate with you. Maybe this week, you decide to follow the rule of shopping only the peripheries of the supermarket. Just try it once. Walk the outer ring of the store and see what ends up in your cart. Notice what you're leaving behind in those middle aisles. Or maybe you pick the rule, don't eat breakfast cereals that change the color of the milk. It's a small, simple change, but it's a powerful first step in rejecting the most highly processed, sugary foods. Or perhaps you focus on how you eat. For 1 week, make a commitment to do all your eating at a table. No more eating in your room while studying, or in front of a screen. Sit down, put your food on a plate, and just pay attention to the meal for 10 or 15 minutes. The beauty of these rules is that they are not about deprivation. They are about rediscovering a more joyful and satisfying relationship with food. It's about the pleasure of a truly fresh strawberry from a local farm, the satisfaction of cooking a simple meal for people you care about, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are nourishing your body in the best way possible. That was the book summary of Food Rules by Michael Pollan. We've certainly touched on the core principles today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic of this little book is in its simplicity and clarity. The real impact happens when you hold it in your hands and let these simple, one-sentence rules sink in. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If the idea of finding freedom from food confusion and anxiety resonates with you, then please grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's about equipping yourself with a toolkit for a healthier and happier life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.